people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
And it was a really hard decision. It was a really tough choice, and obviously it didn't look great because I had the loss and then I changed train up. But people that know, it was behind the scenes. It was kind of like, even if I won the fight, I still was going to make an adjustment because I knew that I needed it in my career. I needed a reset, and I just needed fresh eyes, and I needed to keep learning, because maybe I was just getting complacent and going through the motions and not really pushing myself as much as I should be. Whereas now I'm up here in Steel City with Grant. I've got amazing fighters around me now, and in Jamie's as well. I had amazing fighters, but this is like completely different. Fans of them as well. So when you're training with people that you can sit at home and watch day in, day out, training with them is even better. Sparring with them, like you're learning constantly. And now I'm in the gym and I'm doing like double the work. So I come in could be about 10 and not leave until 12, 1. So it's just putting a lot more work in. And maybe that's the loss as well. It's made me hungrier, made me a bit more like, bloody hell, I've lost. It happens. Like, I can be beat, so I've got to work harder now. And I said it before, a loss is a lesson. Obviously, when I did suffer my first loss, it did hurt. But now I think, do you know what? I needed that kick up the ass, because now I'm in the gym a lot more. I'm working harder than ever, and I felt defeat, and it doesn't feel nice, and I don't want it to happen again. So I'm not unbeatable. I've been beat. So
Chantel Cameron says that she was going to make the change anyway, whether she would have won the Katie Taylor rematch or lost the Katie Taylor rematch, because she felt like she was getting complacent. Now, whether or not you want to believe that, I'll leave such judgments up to you. It would have seemed quite strange if she would have won the rematch, then decided to leave Nigel Travis, leave Jamie Moore, at the peak of her powers and the height of her popularity. You're telling me if you would have won, you would have still left those guys?
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if I believe that. It's all water under the bridge and change in the couch cushions now, because she's completely changed her decorum. She's at Steel City Boxing.
She's at Queensbury.
She's fighting Elhamed Mekhaled, a familiar face, a familiar fighter who's been in there with the likes of Delphine Passoon, has been in there with the likes of Alicia Baumgartner. Now she's about to be in there with Chantel Cameron. Those fights took place down there at 130 pounds, whereas this fight is taking place up there at 140 for what is a WBC interim title.
What do you want to see?
From Chantel?
Yeah.
I want to see more aggression. I want to see more infighting. I want to see more body punching. I want to see a stoppage. I want to see a knockout. Because the fighter that she's fighting is moving up 2 divisions, 2 weight classes, and because Chantel is a puncher, more specifically, a boxer puncher that knows how to turn the heat up and knows how to put pressure on their opponents. Chantel is malleable like that. We saw that in the Katie Taylor fight, the first one.
I want to see more of that in this one.
But don't you think you're dismissing Elhamed Mekhaled, who's an all-around good fighter, a solid fighter, experienced, and she's got some skills of her own? Don't you think it's asking a lot of Chantel to stop a fighter that's never been stopped, but has been in there with punchers, hard punchers like Delphine Passoon, hard punchers like Alicia Baumgartner? Don't you think it's asking a lot that Chantel stop her?
Hey, she's fighting a fighter who's moving up 2 weight classes for this fight.
Interesting particulars in association with it is that before Elhamed Mekhaled faces Chantel in July, she's going to be returning to action this weekend. You heard that right. This weekend, she's going to be facing veteran journeywoman Eva Cantos, who has an upside-down record in what is a 6-rounder.
It's a quick turnaround.
Elhamed Mekhaled rebounded off that decision loss to Alicia Baumgartner last year against Yulia Kutsenko, fight that took place in May. Elhamed won a unanimous decision. She's going to return to action this weekend.
Then, provided she wins, she'll face Chantel in July.
That fight, Chantel is the logical choice. but because she's known for power, known for strength, because she's the naturally bigger woman, fully acclimated to 140 pounds, I am expecting a lot. When you say that you had to change a decorum and you needed that kick in the ass, that losing to Katie reinvigorated you, well, I expect to see it, and I expect you to show it.
I want to see a stoppage.
Want to see a knockout. It's been a long while since Chantel Cameron knocked somebody out. I think she can knock out Mekhaled if she makes a conscious effort to go to her body and stay on her body, take her legs away, slow her down. She can land those big punches, force a referee stoppage.
This is for a WBC interim title that theoretically lines up the winner for the winner of Taylor versus Serrano 2.
But I've been saying it. If Katie Taylor loses the rematch to Amanda, there may be a trilogy. And if there's a trilogy, Chantel would have to wait even longer to get a shot at the winner.
Things to think about.
David Benavidez is a good fighter. He's a really good fighter, and it's an interesting fight, to be honest, against Gvozdyk. Yeah, he's good for light heavyweight division.
Light heavyweight division. My skills.
Conversation that became a conversation in the last 2 years is the potentiality of a Benavidez versus Bivol fight. Now that David is making his maiden voyage to that division opposite the ring former champion Gvozdyk, it will resurface.
If David wins.
If David doesn't, and he loses to a 37-year-old Alexander Gvozdyk, well, there goes the neighborhood, and there goes that conversation. After Dimitri Bivol beat Canelo Alvarez, you saw David Benavidez start talking about sparring sessions. PBC fighters do love their gym stories, and David is not immune. He started talking about how he sparred Dimitri Bivol before, and he thinks that he can beat him. He thinks that he can knock him out. That was something like a year, 2 years ago he started up with that?
Has it been that long?
Just about. 2 years later, he's finally deciding to take the plunge, jump into the deep end of the light heavyweight division against Alexander Gvozdyk, who recently ramped up his comeback. He's about 2 to 3 fights into it.
Pedestrian level competition, building himself back up.
This is a step up for Gvozdyk compared to the last 2 or 3 guys that he's fought, and it's definitely a step up for David Benavidez, who I think was matched against overmatched opponents, overmatched competition at 168 pounds.
The beneficiary of a height advantage and a weight advantage the night of.
I feel like for the first time in David's career, he's not going to have that working for him. He's not going to have those advantages because he's not actually bigger than Alexander Gvozdyk. This is not a light-punching Demetrius Andrade or a light-punching Caleb Plant, a grossly overmatched David Lemieux, Kyron Davis, or Ronald Ellis. This is not that kind of guy.
No.
This is an acid test. I look at it as an acid test. Alexander Gvozdyk has only ever been beat once, just once, by Artur Beterbiev. And there's no shame in that. And that was many, many years ago in 2018.
I don't think David punches as hard as Artur Beterbiev, personally. I don't think he's got the same kind of power in both hands that Artur has.
I know he doesn't have the same kind of amateur pedigree that Artur has, and if you're observant, you can see it, that they're both pressure fighters, but the way that Artur applies pressure is a lot more refined and nuanced than what you get from David. What you get from David is a really big guy marching forward in a high guard, who once he gets within striking distance, he starts letting punches go, but he's vulnerable for punches.
He's open for them.
But because he doesn't often face guys his own size, and because he doesn't often face guys who can punch,
Who can make him pay for it.
he's gotten away with it so far. The Gvozdyk fight is a legitimate acid test that can prove that David belongs, that he can hang with the big boys at 175. It's a 3-pronged process when you think about it. A potential Benavidez versus Bivol fight. The first prong is David has to make it past Gvozdyk. The second prong is Dimitri has to make it past Artur whenever they fight, which could presumably happen later on this year. That's the second prong.
Dimitri's got to win.
Then the third prong would be Dimitri facing David at some point next year.
What about Canelo?
Talks for a Canelo versus Benavidez fight have since cooled. Maybe people are tired of talking about it, or maybe they're just distracted by what is actually happening in the sport. You know, we got the undisputed heavyweight championship not but 2 weeks ago. That's given us enough to reflect upon without mulling over the same subjects and bringing up the same talking points.
Talks for Canelo versus Benavidez have cooled.
For the sake of conversation, entertain a Benavidez versus Bivol fight, and how in some ways it's an eventuality because David's fight is for a WBC interim title. Dimitri's fight, when it does happen, the one with Artur, that's for undisputed.
If Dimitri wins, he'll have the green belt, and that would line up David for him, provided that David wins.
David is still on the PBC side of things, at least for now. His fight is on the undercard of Javante's next fight, but no new announcements have been made in reference to another PBC show that same month, or the month of July, or the month of August, or in September. All we're hearing about is a preliminary situation between Spence and Fundora for October, but that's about it.
No new shows have been announced.
Rumor has it Elhamed is leaving boxing and the PBC is out of money. Fighters are leaving. We talk about it almost every other video. Could David Benavidez end up being one of those fighters that skedaddles, that gets the fuck out of Dodge? Could Samson end up taking him somewhere else?
Wait a minute, you're assuming he's still going to be with Samson after this fight.
I remember last year his father said they had inked a 3-fight deal, a new 3-fight deal.
Contract for 3 fights. We have Bivol, Andrade, we have Charlo, we have David Morrell. You know, if everything goes well, then I'm pretty sure it's going to go well. So I wouldn't sign that contract for 168 if I didn't think he was going to do 168.
The first fight of the deal was the Plant fight. The second fight of the deal was the Andrade fight. The third fight of the deal would be the Gvozdyk fight. Doesn't that mean that after that, David's a free agent? He could have go somewhere else. A promoter that actually has money on an actual platform that's giving him money. He could have go to Golden Boy. Go to DAZN.
That'd be a good fit.
David Benavidez on Golden Boy. If he did that, that would be a good fit, and it would bring him closer at least to the same platform that Dimitri Bivol fights on. Makes the fight a little bit more feasible, unless David wants to hide behind politics and stay on the PBC side of the street while it still exists.
It's up to him.
If he beats Gvozdyk, the fans, the media, they have to hold David's feet to the fire after that, because if you are a free agent, there are other fights out there, exciting ones, that we don't gotta keep talking about the same fucking thing.
Obsessing about the same shit.
Get the fuck out of my face!
Hey, I'm driving here.
Just some things to think about ahead of Dimitri Bivol's fight this weekend, which is tantamount to a keep busy fight, and David's fight next month with Gvozdyk. That's not a keep busy fight, that's an acid test, and we'll see if David passes it.
If he can, the rest of his career is on the other side of that fight. The big fights, the big nights, the big paydays, all that shit.
You want to get paid, don't you? You want to make money?
Treat your nose.
You gotta win. It's the name of the game. Upstairs in the land of the giants, the heavyweight division, revisiting some old comments that Philippe Hrgovic made en route to what is this weekend's Daniel Dubois fight. Our sparring was not so good for him. Daniel Dubois and Philippe Hrgovic meet as part of the Queensberry versus Matchroom 5-for-5 bill.
Philippe's with Matchroom, Daniel's with Queensberry.
Dubois is coming off the best win of his career over Jarrell Miller in December, and Philippe Hrgovic is at the front of the queue by way of the IBF to face newly crowned undisputed champion Alexander Usyk. I am very confident, said the softly spoken Dubois. I'm working hard and ready to prove that I have changed. We had a spar a while back, and Hrgovic, keeps talking about that. So I want to show that people can change. I am a different animal now.
Is he?
I have to admit that Daniel proved me wrong. I have to admit that I picked Jarrell Miller to beat him, and he didn't. I thought Daniel Dubois, he was going to find himself in a pinch, in a tough spot, and he was going to give up. He was going to quit.
People have been calling him a quitter ever since the Joe Joyce fight. People felt that he gave up in that fight. People feel that he gave up in the Usyk fight, that he should have rose to his feet, he should have kept going.
Dubois is now trained by veteran trainer Don Charles, having previously been trained by Martin Bowers and Shane McGuigan. Hrgovic seems very relaxed about his assignment, and seemingly has great confidence about the June 1st fight based on that previous sparring session. I hope he has changed, because the fight will only last a few rounds if he didn't, Hrgovic said. So I do hope he has changed, because that sparring we did together was not so good for him.
You guys know how I feel about gym stories.
What you're talking about is a sparring session, and sparring ain't fighting, irrespective of what happened in that sparring session. How long ago was that? Who was Daniel Dubois with, and how much has changed since then? These are all factors that matter.
So are you picking Daniel?
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that there's only so much you can derive from a sparring session that likely took place 2, 3, or more years ago.
Daniel's older now, more mature.
He's got a different corner now, and he's saying things with his chest. I feel like he's grown in confidence, and rumor has it he's got himself a nice little girlfriend that gave him a nice little slice of pussy.
That'll man you up.
So, the version of Daniel that Philippe sparred, not fought, but sparred. Well, maybe that was a different guy than the Daniel that stands before us here today. Maybe it is.
The other thing is that he's poking the bear.
That's what Philippe is doing. Daniel's already working to beat you. He's already trying to knock you out. If you go poking the bear and lighting a fire under his ass, isn't that going to make him try that much harder? And doesn't that make him more dangerous?
So are you picking Daniel?
I didn't say that. That's not what I said. But it does seem to be irritating Daniel. Daniel Dubois hopes to make Filip Hrgovic eat his words and send the unbeaten Croatian into retirement.
I saw an interview with Philippe earlier this week where he said that if he can't beat Daniel Dubois, he'll retire. He said that.
Does he think so little of Daniel Dubois ahead of this fight? Does he think so little of Daniel and Daniel's boxing, his ability, and his power? Does he think so little of him that he's that confident that he would say something like that?
Well, that's what he said.
Speaking to IFL TV, Dubois admitted that the sparring with Hrgovic had been hard and that the Croatian was a fucking tough guy to come up against. It was a hard spar. This kid Hrgovic was fucking tough, Dubois said. That's sparring. It's irrelevant, really. Let's go. I'm ready for a fight. In an interview following the press conference, Hrgovic claimed that if he was defeated by the former world title challenger Dubois, he would hang up his gloves and walk away from the sport.
That's insulting.
Upon hearing Hrgovic's self-given ultimatum, Dubois promised to send the Olympian to retirement. If he's gonna retire, then let him retire. I'll retire him, added Dubois. I did a job on Jarrell Big Baby Miller, and now I have to do a job on Filip Hrgovic. On paper, it's a harder fight than Miller, but in reality, with what I can do when I get in there, I can make it an easier fight for myself just by being on form. I need to be on form and stay on the right mind.
I think Daniel's a harder puncher than Philippe. I also think he's more explosive, too. There's more snap on his jab, more snap on his right.
But I also think he's got defensive deficiencies that could cost him. He got hit quite a bit in the Jarrell Miller fight. And even though he won that fight and proved me wrong in the process, this is a different assignment. Jarrell Miller is a very stocky, very stocky.
Slow-footed.
You know, he comes right at you. Jarrell Miller is a pressure fighter and a volume puncher. He's not as mobile as Filip Hrgovic. Not as tall, not as long, not as well-schooled. Remember, Filip is an Olympic bronze medalist.
With a penchant for rabbit punches.
This is a really tough fight to edge for me because I'm actually a little bit more impressed with Daniel and how he's been looking than I've ever been with Filip. I'm really just not impressed with anything Filip Hrgovic does.
But then again, I wasn't impressed with anything Joe Joyce did up until he fought Daniel, and he beat him. Just using a jab. A simple jab that Daniel couldn't get out of the way of.
So when I thought Daniel was going to beat Joe, I was wrong. When I thought Jarrell was going to beat Daniel, I was wrong again.
And my luck's not too good with Daniel Dubois' fights.
I did pick Usyk to beat him, and Usyk did beat him, but I think most people picked Usyk to beat him, so, you know.
This is a tougher fight to edge.
I kinda like Filip Hrgovic's confidence, his air, his braggadocio ahead of this fight, but I also like Daniel Dubois' anger. It's visceral. It's from the inside. He's pretty fucking tired of hearing about that sparring session and having Filip throw it in his fucking face.
You gotta make a decision.
Not tonight, I don't. I got another 2 to 3 days to decide who do I think is gonna win this fight.
Stay tuned.